Okay. Got this morning and next Sunday too. One announcement with that, I believe next Sunday morning, Sarah Balzer will be presenting about what she did last year in Colorado Springs, but that will be downstairs. I think they're going to be getting this ready for Promotion Sunday, so we'll be downstairs next Sunday. This morning we have what might seem like a grim topic, prison ministries, but it's actually something that I've found quite interesting. There's a program I've participated in for a number of years called M2, which stands for Match 2. Bob Friesen also does that. Wilbur used to. And Bob was going to help with this morning, but he's not able to come. And then Daryl participates in a program that works with people after they get out, helping them to get adjusted. So he'll give a little or some presentation about that. And then Charles knows a person who has been in prison and out and has some things he wants to say about that. So we'll each say what we have to say, and then following that, I'm expecting there will be some time. We'll open it up for discussion and questions after we're all done. Like I said, I've participated in the program called M2, stands for Match 2. It's run by Offender Victim Ministries based out of Newton. And essentially what the program, what it is inmates at the state prison in Hutch that do not get many visitors are eligible for this. And we go one evening a month and visit with them for an hour to an hour and a half, and that's essentially it. My time for going there, right now I'm at the central unit, the main big prison with the walls and the barbed wire fences and everything. We get there a little bit before 7, go into the guardhouse there, and you take off your belt, and if you got metal in your shoes, you take those off and you go through the metal detector. You want to make sure you leave your cell phones in the car. You don't want to take that in there with you. Then after everybody's kind of checked in, you go through, it's a double gate that there's somebody behind the glass that locks it. It's got 2 doors, one on each side. Never are both open at the same time. The one opens, you go in, you have your ID, and you swipe it through a little reader so they know who's in the prison. Then that gate closes, the other one opens, and you're outside for a little bit, and then you go into the main building, go past some offices, and you stop at a little break room. They've got some vending machines. You can buy some Cokes or snacks or something for the people you're visiting with. And then after the offices end, you go through another double gate like that where, again, only one of them is open at the time, and then into a large round area it's called the Rotunda. And you can see off in 4 directions. You've got cell block A, B, C, and D. And go past that, and then there's a hallway which leads to the lunchroom, to the cafeteria, and up some steps. And there are elevators available for those who need that. And then go into an area where there are some classrooms. And the way it's set up is you pick one of the rooms, you grab 2 chairs and kind of set them together and find a corner of a room, and then the inmates start trickling in and visit for about an hour and a half until they tell you it's time, and then you can go home. At the East unit, which is a medium security prison I've been to before. That's not where I'm visiting right now. It's a little bit different setup there. You've got a kind of a cafeteria area and tables and chairs, and you just pick one and you sit there, but it's essentially the same process. All you do is visit with them. You're not actually permitted to do anything else. You can't do anything for them, contact for them. You can correspond a little bit. Essentially, all I do is send birthday cards, Christmas cards. The people that participate in the program, it's interesting. There are some very elderly people that do this. The majority are men. They're not all. Sometimes there's a husband-wife couple that visit with one prisoner. I've seen husband-wife each have their own. During the school year, sometimes there are some young people, some Bethel or Heston students that come probably for the course of the year, and 2 or 3 of them will visit with one prisoner. But there are people that have done this for quite some time. A lot of people, once you get started. I've been participating. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but I think it's probably been approaching 15 years. I had one fellow that I visited with for about 10 years until he was released. There have been several that you come once or visit with them once or twice and they decide not to do it for, you don't know why. I had one fellow for about 6 months, and the fellow I'm visiting now I've visited with for probably about a year. It's really been an education for me in many ways. There are things I've seen and come to understand, and there are also questions that I still have and that have been raised by this. You hear a lot of stories, and over the time that you're with them, and if you, as the year or 2 or 3 or so start to go by, you get to know the person a little bit better. It takes a little bit of time for trust to develop and for them to open up to what's really going on. You hear a lot of stories about what goes on in the prison, and for that it's kind of nice that we have Misty here who works in the prison, because I can talk to her and say, well, this fellow says that, what's your perspective on it? And she'll give me her perspective, and so that helps balance out the understanding of what goes on. And then the stories of their lives and the way that people grow up in cultures and families that's very, very different than growing up Mennonite in central Kansas. One of the things I've come to see in doing this is, while I have not done the kinds of things those fellows have done to bring themselves to that place, I'm very capable of lashing out when I feel hurt. I'm very capable of putting what I want, what I think, ahead of someone else's needs. I'm very capable of being irritable, or when someone else doesn't do what I think they should. And in a very real way, the kind of spiritual action that takes place of being selfish in those ways is exactly the same type of things that they have done to get them in there, although they've acted physically in more destructive ways to other people. The internal actions are exactly the same. So I kind of come to realize that I'm not any better than those guys. And so you try to work on it, you try to improve it. I try to be more patient, you try to be more loving, but you don't, even when you see you're doing these things, you don't fix it just like that. It's not a matter of, okay, you're doing this wrong, so do it differently. When we're in pain, when we experience fear, when we've been hurt in some way or another, our responses are sometimes instinctive and not thought out in trying to protect ourselves. Some of the speakers we've had this summer have been, I think, very good in exploring different facets of this. And I've come to the conclusion that probably every single one of us is dysfunctional in the way we think in some way in our life. We have some areas of our life where things don't go right and we don't know how to make it right. And so we find ways to compensate. But that's part of being human, it seems like. It seems like that's the way God put us on this earth. The first lady that spoke this summer, and I don't remember her name, but she was talking about poverty. The second Sunday she was here, I found very fascinating because she was talking about the science of poverty and how as she grew up, she was always in crisis mode. She knew how to function in crisis, but she did not know how to think long-term and plan in a healthy way. And so I look at myself, I look at the people I love. None of us are perfect, and we're all imperfect in different ways. The people that live in the prison, the people that work in the prison aren't perfect either. And the guys that live there have to figure out how to deal with that. And then there comes a time for most of them when they have to figure out how they're going to manage things once they get out. And this gets more into the area that Daryl will be talking about. There's a passage in Jeremiah that I've always found very fascinating. It's right at the beginning of the chapter, and it's verse 4 and 5. The word of the Lord came to me thus: before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. A prophet to the nations, I appointed you. Well, there's a couple things that are interesting into that. Okay, he appointed Jeremiah to be a prophet, but presumably he appointed me to be something too. Well, what is that? Then you think these guys that were, some people have easier lives than others. The people that were born into lives that there's really no other way that it's going to be difficult. Well, what did God appoint them to be doing too? Well, you don't know. I have theories, working theories, and kind of the best theory I've got at this point is that life is an education. The other part of that's interesting is I knew you before I formed you in the womb. the soul who we are, we kind of assume that continues after this body is gone. That indicates that it may have been present before the body came around. I don't know how that all works, but I think the thing I try to reach for is to realize that the soul is not something I have, but the soul is me. And the solutions to these problems and difficulties is spiritual, to attune ourselves to Jesus, to God, and the things that I can't work out myself, to allow myself to be helped. Anyway, I'm kind of going on here that as to some of the things I've kind of thought and discovered as I've gone through this. It's been an interesting program for me. I know they have a pretty good waiting list of people that are waiting for volunteers, and sometimes they can wait for quite a while. When you walk through the prison, sometimes there's guys standing around. I've never once felt scared or threatened. For one thing, there's guards too, but the guys there, as best I can understand, know what the program is, they know why you're there, and they have a respect for what you're doing when you're there. I think that's all I have for now. Daryl and Charles will talk, and then there'll be time after that for some discussion.
Morning. This morning's Our Daily Bread devotional had a scripture that just seemed to fit very well for this morning, why we are presenting this morning, and why we come to church, period. One of the things that Pastor Wilmer quite often talks about, why are we here? And let us, this is from Hebrews 10:24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. So let's help each other and support each other in our activities, in our Christian endeavor, and in our love for one another. I've been involved in a program called Mentoring for Success. It's a fairly new program run by the state of Kansas. And have a short video here that Brad will start in just a little bit, that regardless of your political leanings, this is a program that was instituted by Governor Brownback, and it was at his direction that this program was started. It's a statewide program, and it helps support those people that are coming out of prison. Currently, there are about 5,000 individuals that are released from prison every year in the state of Kansas, and they can use some help. So I'll let Brad play the video and let you know then how I got involved in this program and some other details.
Mentors provides pro-social support and accountability to offenders during their transition to the community. Mentors demonstrate love, patience, humility, goodness, and self-control. They help offenders to make peace with their past and change their worldview in a way that leads to a more disciplined and meaningful life. Mentors are making a difference in practical ways as well as by helping offenders obtain jobs, housing, medical services, educational opportunities, and most importantly, being there when an offender hits the wall. I once asked an inmate at the Ellsworth Correctional Facility why he kept coming back to prison. He said he struggled with drugs and nobody to talk with when he hit the rough patches. He said if he could talk to an employee at the Ellsworth Correctional Facility, he could get through the rough times. This employee had profoundly impacted this person's life. He trusted him, he learned from his positive actions, and as a result, he and everyone within the inmate circle of influence is now better. The people in the state of Kansas are better due to the impact of Mentoring for Success.
Mentoring for Success is a statewide initiative where mentors help inmates transition from prison back home to the communities. Mentors provide the tools and support an offender needs to thrive and be successful in the community. Mentoring for Success gives an offender a whole new way of life. Imagine someone not having contact with the outside world for years, then being released and on their own, not having anyone to talk to, not knowing how to begin making a new life. As a mentor, you could help that person get connected to the community again. Help with resume writing, help them find employment, help navigate unfamiliar systems, get a driver's license, help them set goals, provide positive encouragement, and hold them accountable. Mentoring for Success is important because people do not come out of prison wanting to fail. They come out of prison wanting to succeed. Many people coming out of prison have skills and knowledge of what they should do once they leave, but they don't have anyone for support or guidance. Many have burned every healthy connection they had, and a mentor can be that guidance, support, and encouragement to point them in the right direction and help keep them on the right path. To be a mentor, you must be at least 21 years of age and have a gift of helping someone find their potential in life. You don't have to be a college graduate or from any particular background. You just have to have the heart and the desire and the passion to truly help someone who wants it and needs it. We need mentors, and we need your help. The Kansas Department of Corrections has both male and female prisons across the state, and we will train you to be a mentor. Safety is our #1 priority, and our mentor coordinators are hands-on throughout the mentoring process, assisting and guiding the mentoring relationships, and are available 24 hours a day. Mentoring for Success is never a burden, but only a blessing to all of those who are involved. Please contact me for details to learn how you could make a real difference in someone's life.
Hi, my name is Ron, and I have been a mentor in the prison ministry for approximately 20 years. I met Russ through the Bible study group that I helped lead. I've been in Russ's shoes and know how challenging it can be with getting a job and rejoining society. As we progressed through the mentoring process and as he moved towards his release, we developed tangible plans through the facility counselors. It was a team effort, and we had a lot of support from the mentoring coordinators.
Hi, I'm Russ. When I was arrested and went to prison, it was my 3rd time going back. Then I went into a Bible study program and met Ron. As a mentor, he's helped me numerous times, just to have a friend on the outside. He's assisted me in locating the programs I need and provided the assurance that I can make it and never go back to prison. If I got a problem, I can call Ron. This is a life-changing program.
I met Tori by volunteering through the Reaching Out from Within service organization inside the Women's Correctional Facility. 6 months prior to Tori's release, we met with the mentoring coordinator at Topeka Correctional Facility and immediately felt at ease. It was a very welcoming process. The very first meeting between us showed a connection. We are close to our mothers and other women family members. We look up to them. I asked Tori if she wanted a mentor. I asked her about her goals, going to school, continuing to work. We met once a month for 4 months, and then 2 times a month towards the end of her sentence. We text each other once a week for checking in, and see each other twice a month for dinner. Our get-togethers are great. This experience has been absolutely rewarding. To be of service to someone who wants to change her life and better herself.
This has been a very positive experience. I didn't know anything about mentoring at first. It was recommended to me as something needed if you want to move forward in life. A mentor is supportive, provide someone to talk with, and to grow a trusting friendship. Everyone's bonds are different. You have to lay things on the line and determine a connection. You invest as you push forward. We support one another, we grow spiritually together, and our bond is real strong. This is the beginning, and we have a long journey to continue.
When someone commits a crime, it is the responsibility of local law enforcement to bring the person to trial and/or incarceration if the law designates. When someone's incarcerated, it's then the responsibility of the Department of Corrections to keep Kansans safe as the individual spends time incarcerated and learning through various programs. A huge part of the responsibility rests with a community of volunteers, churches, local organizations, and ministries to see that these individuals are mentored in a way to keep them from returning to incarceration. As governor, it's my responsibility to challenge citizens to be active in making Kansas the best place to live in the United States of America. And the Mentoring for Success program is a great step towards helping make that a reality.
I got involved in this program about 3.5 years ago, something like that. Again, Misty's name comes up. She introduced the program in church one day, shared about it. And on the way home from church that afternoon, Nita asked me, "Are you thinking about that program?" Well, I thought that was a pretty good indication I probably ought to consider it. And so I volunteered for it. And as Bruce had indicated, it's been a very rewarding program. It has not been difficult. It's been making contacts for people. It's been interesting. Todd Wiley, Jacob Maxwell, and David Bragg. These are 3 individuals that I have worked with. They are all registered offenders on the KBI list. If you go look up their names, you can find their history. Todd Wiley was the first one I worked with. He was in Larned, so got set up with him, and the program works that you visit with the individual about 6 months prior to their release. And simply visit with them. What are their goals? What are their aspirations? How are they going to fulfill some of the things? How are they going to be successful when they're released? Todd Wiley was a snake handler. He loved snakes. He loved reptiles. So he was going to work with a fella out of Wichita and raise snakes, sell them. That was going to be his goal. Fortunately, he had a backup plan. He wanted to be a welder. So he managed to, after he was released, I really didn't have to do much help with him making contacts. He had several of the contacts made already. But I think just visiting with him, bouncing some ideas off of him, and both ways, he was released back into Hutchinson and into Newton, and he was already signed up for the Hutch-JUCO welding program. So he completed that program, and he went to work at not AGCO, but the other Excel in Heston. And currently he's working for another company that supports the AGCO industry. He's a lead man on their molding products. So he has been successful to this point as far as I know. I worked with him for 6 months in prison, and about 3 months after he was released, I think he said, okay, he didn't need my support anymore. So that was fine. That's how the program works. When there's a mutual understanding between the mentee and the mentor, the separation can occur, and it's not an ongoing program, but it can be. Jacob Maxwell was incarcerated in Hutchinson. He was on work release out of the South Unit. He was employed in Halstead when I met him. He had help with from his employer to find housing in Hutchinson or in Halstead, so he would be successful and have a place to go to. So I made contact with his employer, say, okay, is everything cool? He works good, and they were very impressed with him, and they like I said, they helped him find housing and were very supportive of him. Jacob was not successful. He had been involved with drugs, was selling drugs because it was easy money for him. He was also addicted. He is back and housed at the Reno County Jail right now. David Bragg was in Hutchinson at the South Unit also. He is on work release. He was and is still employed at Chili's as a cook. He has been an inspiration. When I go visit David, he is always positive. You know, yep, things are going to work out. He had a son with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend informed him that she and her son were moving to Florida. Boy, that hit him hard because he really likes his son and wanted to have that relationship. Well, it's not going to happen. So we worked through that. And just visiting with just allowing him to talk about it, I think, was helpful for him. He's been released since July 27. I offered transportation for him and stuff, and nope, he had that all lined up. He had a co-worker at Chili's that helped him out. So at this point, he is successful. I'm contacted Interfaith Housing, and he made connection through them and found an apartment to live in because he didn't know where he's going to live. He is not familiar with the city of Hutchinson, and he is getting there. He is seeking a membership at the YMCA. He likes to play basketball, so he wants to get on the basketball team. So that's about what I have. It's been, like I said, it's been a great experience, and I do have some brochures out here in the hall on the table called Mentoring for Success. It has some more details, has contact information if you're interested in getting involved. Charlie?
Well, out of these presenters, I'm probably the least qualified to do this. Let's have a show of hands. Has anybody ever been to visit anybody in prison? Show of hands. And that's a local ministry here that we can all do if you want to. My involvement with prisoners is, it goes back a long ways, and I've seen some people that were in a boot camp that you knew that would never make it out in the real world. The support there was they was going to try to get away with everything they could. In my case, they made it out there so far. I got a couple of statements I want to read before I start off here. If a government is big enough to take care of you, it is strong enough to take everything away from you. More responsibility means less government. Less responsibility means more government. My talk is about J.R. Caddy. He was a prisoner for 22 years. I learned to know him about a year ago, or not even quite that much. He worked at Chili's. He was a cook there. And you guys' scriptures this morning, I read both of them. So, you know, we're hitting home in a small circle here. Everything's happening. Another deal I have with prisoners is that I'm in charge of the tractors at the Kansas State Fair. So for 10 days, I work with some prisoners there in the maintenance shop. I work beside them. I don't work with them. About 4 years ago, saw a guy once and saw him the next year. And when I left the fair that year, I said, "Hey, I'll see you again next year." He says, "No, you won't." I says, "Why?" "Well, I get out sometime this summer." I says, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to run till I get caught again." And the reason was he's going to get caught again was he had a drug problem, and he had made up his mind already before he got out of prison that he was not going to follow that drug program when he got out of prison. And, you know, these guys got their own minds made up, and I don't know where he's at now, but I'm sure he's not out on the street because he didn't follow up the program. J.R. Caddy. My name is John Caddy. I was asked to write a letter on behalf of the pastors, ministers, and who have entered the prison walls to the inmates who needed them most. I was at one time one of them. I served 28 years, and had it not been for them, I'd still be behind bars. I have a 25-year relationship with my pastor, who considers me family. All of you who serve God by going to see inmates will hardly see the effects from the DOC, or Department of Corrections. But the effect you will see will play out in the change you will evidently see over time. True transformation isn't instant, but it takes long periods of time by those men in charge and begin to see the errors they have done. The call to help them, these men, are greater than one can imagine, but the long-term effects are forever economic effects. Unfortunately, the Department of Corrections are always the first ones to get cut back on money intended to help the inmates. But it still affects you. There are a rare opportunity to help those who are needed the most. These men and women are fighting harder than most and take actions to show it. Now the right time to aid these people. I thank you again on behalf of all of them. You saved me, and you could many more save them to keep up the good fight. J.R. Caddy signed the name here. A couple of emphasis things he made for me is that the government, when it comes to cutting back on money, the rehabilitation programs are the first ones they cut back on. And seems like the United States has got the idea that prisoners have got to run to make money. And that really hurts the program. Now, JR's history is that 22 years ago, the first Mennonite church in Hudson ministered, her name was Debbie Schmidt, adopted him, kind of. And this has been a 22-year deal going on with him, you know, just to get him out. He went in prison when he was 17, I think. Right now he's 44. He's got a good financial backing, thanks to some of his relation dying, and he got some money inherited. So I talked to him the other day. I asked him, I says, black and white, how are you doing financially? I'm spending way more than I'm making. You know, he's working for minimum wages at the etc. shop. And he does have this financial backing. Will he make it? You know, I pray for him every day. Of course, the prayer is the strongest thing going for him. That's one of the things that's going for him. And the First Mennonite Church in Hudson did this for 22 years. So it's making, just from me observing him, when he went into prison, he was 17 years old. Now he's 44 years old. His mind is like he's 17 years old. When he got out of prison, one of the first things he had to do is to get him a driver's license. He got him a driver's license. His family, his dad, provided him with a pickup. He's doing great, I think, but he does need a lot more prayer. That's all I got to say. We got a few minutes here for questions. I'm less qualified to answer them, so. Any questions?
Josh, yeah, raise your hand, Josh. You've got the microphone.
How much it has to do with
Come on in here, Daryl.
people were released? Is there any concern that they would like come look you up? You try to keep your, like where you live and all that secret from them. Is there any concern where, they could look you up and bother you and things like that,
One of the things I do is when I write, I give the church address. So, I don't talk about my family, I don't send them pictures of my kids and so forth. But it's not only the person, it's anything they have, other people will see it too. So, there's ways to be smart, but I don't feel afraid.
Is that something you were coached on?
Yeah, that's something they teach you to and suggest that you do. Although my name and number is in the phone book, so.
I think one of the things here is that the people that hold grudges are not going to get out of prison. Now, like JR, his days off are Wednesday and Sunday. Every Wednesday, I think for the next 22 years, he's on probation. So he'll report it to his probation officer right off the bat. He also has got he's got to go psycho and stuff like that, treatment, to make sure he's on the straight and narrow, And they're watching him awful close. He's got areas he can't go to. Matter of fact, if he wants to, he can't go back to the Kansas City area. And if he wants to do any traveling at all, I think over 100 miles he's got to report in. So these guys here, they want to get well. The people that are going to harm you, they're not going to let them loose right away. That's the way I feel about it.
I just have a comment like Charlie was saying, the one that had already made up his mind. I know when I was back in law enforcement several years ago, I took several people to prison in Oklahoma, and I would ask the same question: why? Why do you want to go back to prison, knowing that they had been released and they had their chance? And a lot of them told me, I have no family, or if I do have family, they will not accept me any longer. And I have nothing. I have no job, no place to go. And in prison, we get meals, we have TVs, we have everything we can ask for. And so I think a lot of people, they do have their minds set up that if I get out, I'm going to do something to get back in, because they don't have the abilities, they don't have the capabilities to think that they can, to make a success at life without family, without help. So I think these programs might be a good success for everybody if we can get people to realize that. So I think that's good.
One thing right here now is that MCC, you've heard of the school kits, health kits, they got a prison kit right now. And if you donate that, it's a little deal they give to the prisoners that just something to get them started with. While it goes to them while they're in prison, and also there's a kit that when they get out of prison they can get. And it's just the basic needs just to get them by the first week. But there's another local program we can develop on.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think these things do help. At least what I do, there's no quick fixes, but small things accumulate. And over time, just knowing that somebody cares even just a little bit, when we feel loved, we make better decisions than when we feel isolated. And you don't solve things for people, but every little bit helps them make better decisions, but it's not going to be quick fixes.
One of the driving stories that started the Mentoring for Success program is in that little brochure, and it's called Helen's Story. Helen was released from prison in Topeka, she had no family, like Maxine was describing. She had no place to go, nobody to pick her up. And this was one of the things that, one of the stories that drove Governor Brown back to implement the program. And Maxine ended up homeless in Wichita and died on the streets. And that's one of the stories that's not uncommon. And that's where some of these programs, like the Mentoring for Success and the M2 program, can do wonders for individuals that are being released.
I was on a different angle of this. Misty also got me involved, and I was like a mock interviewer they were supposed to come in and talk to me for a job. And it was amazing how many of these guys are really scared, you know. And one of the things I'd have to reassure them, you know, I'm just like you, you know. Calm down and, you know, be yourself. And I remember one interview, the guy was, you know, they had to make up what they were interviewing for, and he was interviewing to flip hamburgers at McDonald's. And he had an outstanding background. He had an education and everything else. And when I got done with him, I says, you know, you're supposed to go back over the interview and kind of see where they were at. And I says, why are you applying for flipping hamburgers at McDonald's when you've got all this experience? So, you know, there's a lot of low esteem. I've been at the other end of it too, where I had them employed. And it seemed like if they were in prison, they'd show up every morning and they were kind of regulated, you know. They had something to go back to at night. And as soon as you cut these guys loose, some of them, that was the end, you know. They were back on drugs and made a mess. You know, I don't know. But yeah, they need all the help they can get. And the other thing this program does that you haven't brought up, and I'm not sure if it's got cut now, if you're an employer and you hire them, you can get funds from the state for helping these guys get hired. So that was one of the things in my interview they were supposed to bring up, that you know, as an employer I could get money to, if I hired them. So.
Basic needs are food, shelter, and clothing, and one of the questions that I have is, and I think this has been brought up, you know, where do I go after I'm released? And if I have no shelter, what happens if I have no resources to get me shelter for a month? You know, where do I go? Are there any programs that, or does the state furnish a released prisoner who has no financial means to find shelter?
I don't think there's much.
No, the state has very little resources to help release prisoners. They're pretty much on their own to find their own housing, to find their own resources. It's amazing. I mean, they walk out the door and they're no longer responsibility of the state, other than they're most likely on parole, and they do need to report back. And it's specific where they can release to. You know, so if their crime is committed in Wichita, they may not be allowed to relocate to Wichita. It's pretty well regulated where they can locate to. But as far as funding from the state for helping a released prisoner, there's very little available.
I guess one thing right here I'll say is that JR said that there's 3 countries that has better prison systems than the United States. And they are the smaller countries that the government has a rehabilitation program that works after they get out of prison. He says in the United States, the church ministry and the ministers and these programs here is all they have. Where there's 3 other countries that if you get out of prison, there is and one of them is Poland, and I don't know what the other two are. I guess the main thing is that keep doing your ministry here and keep these people in your prayers.
Thank you for your time. If you got more questions, you can talk to any one of us, I guess.
I'll talk to them too.